Joining me now to talk about all of this is New York Republican Congressman Mike Lawler. He is, of course, a member of the House Foreign Relations Committee. So, Congressman, over the weekend, you said that you believe there will be a vote on Ukraine aid when the House returns. Tell me what fashion you think that will come in. Will it be the Senate bill? I know you have a bill that you're working on with Brian Fitzpatrick, or does the Speaker offer up something different?
Well, prior to going on the Easter recess, I, along with Brian Fitzpatrick, Jared Golden, and a number of my colleagues in a bipartisan way, introduced Defending Borders, Defending Democracies, which would provide $66 billion in lethal aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. We have all signed a discharge petition to bring that bill to the floor and have been in touch with the Speaker on several occasions to try and work through and build consensus. There's no question we need to bring a bill to the floor. Iran, China, and Russia are not our allies. They're not our friends. They have engaged in an unholy alliance that has sought to undermine and destabilize the United States and the free world. And we need to support our allies in this time of need. So I am hopeful that the Speaker will bring a bill to the floor. Ideally, it would be one that includes aid for Israel, Ukraine, and Taiwan, as well as border provisions, including Title 42 and Remain in Mexico, which is the bill that we have outlined. But we all have to find compromise here. We're in a divided government, and we need to negotiate. The Speaker ultimately is going to be the decider in what legislation comes to the floor. But my hope is that we get a vote on legislation as soon as we get back.
It seems as though that the Speaker's been pretty guarded in his feelings about this, just kind of hinting without specifics about what type of bill he might support. He talked about this possibility of a loan, the idea of leveraging their natural gas reserves. Have you specifically talked to the Speaker about what his plans are for Ukraine? Do you know of anybody else that spoke to the Speaker about it? Or is this not a conversation you'll have until you return next week?
No, there's been lots of conversations over the last few weeks. Obviously, the issue of a loan has come up, as well as the Repo Act, which would use seized Russian assets to help pay for some of the aid to Ukraine, which, in and of itself, I have no qualms about. With respect to energy, look, this is critical. Iran is the greatest state sponsor of terror. Over the last 3 years, Iranian petroleum sales have increased by $88 billion. Certainly, we don't want other countries reliant on Russian or Iranian gas and oil. So that is something from a national security standpoint we do have to deal with realistically. It's why I introduced the SHIP Act, which would implement secondary sanctions on the purchaser of Iranian petroleum, the greatest purchaser of which is China. So this is something that, from a national security standpoint, should be part of the conversation. And so I certainly, appreciate the Speaker's position on that.
Okay, let's talk, though, about the position the Speaker finds himself in. There is this motion to vacate threat that's hanging over the Speaker right now. It's specifically tied to him putting Ukraine aid on the floor. What is your feeling about this? Could he be in trouble if Ukraine aid actually does get to the floor?
Look, as I've said, it's idiotic and will do nothing to advance the cause of conservatism, and in fact will undermine our House Republican majority. If people haven't learned that lesson from last year, I don't know what will make them learn that lesson. But the bottom line is this: the Speaker has to do what is right by the country. He understands that, and he knows that we need to get a bill on the floor. Obviously, he's seeking to build consensus within the conference, and that's his job. We have a House Republican majority for a reason. And you want to build consensus within the conference. So he's trying to do that. I think my colleagues need to recognize that, removing the Speaker is not going to stop Ukraine aid from happening. It's not going to do anything other than undermine our majority. And so really, the stupidity should stop.
So let's talk now about the issue of abortion. And you said over the weekend that, quote, people want reasonableness. They don't want extremism on this particular issue. But I'm sure you saw this week the Florida Supreme Court paving the way for the state's 6-week abortion ban, with some exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Do you consider that a reasonable standard?
No, and I think obviously in a state like Florida, we're going to see how voters respond to that. I think when you're looking at these issues, even in red states, voters are making it very clear that they don't want extremism when it comes to this issue. They want reasonableness. They don't support the Democratic Party position, which is abortion up to the moment of birth, gender selection for abortion, against parental notification. That's extreme. That's a position that my opponent, Mondaire Jones, supports, for instance. They want reasonableness. It's why, for instance, I've signed on to legislation to protect IVF treatments. Because this is something where millions of families all across this country struggle with infertility. They want to become parents, and we want to help them do that. If IVF treatments are the avenue by which they can do so, that's something that should be protected. I think you're going to see across this country, in states where this is on the ballot, voters are going to make very clear they want reasonableness. They do not want extremism on this issue.
So if I can get some clarity on that. So do you not support any sort of federal ban on abortion or any federal restrictions? You think it should be left up to the states, but that you feel differently when it comes to IVF. Do you believe there should be a federal protection for the practice of IVF?
So I've been very clear. I will not support legislation that would have a federal ban on abortion. Obviously, based on the Dobbs decision, abortion rights are up to each state. And so states are making that determination, and with it, the voters are making determinations in those states, whether it's on the ballot or with respect to their representatives in the state legislature. I do believe, look, we want to promote a culture of life, certainly, and we want to help people with critical medical treatments that would help ensure that we have the right to become parents, to have children, and that's what the IVF protections are there for. And so I have signed on to legislation to do that. The Alabama court, I believe, was wrong in deciding it the way that they did. The legislature there acted, but we want to make sure that IVF treatments are protected nationwide. And that's why I've signed on to legislation to do that.
Okay, Congressman Mike Lawler, we packed in a lot. We appreciate it, sir. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.